standing in front of a geothermal power station right outside of Reykjavik, Iceland. And I'm here with Haldar Bjornsen, who's a climate expert here in Iceland. Haldar, what are we looking at? What does this mean for Iceland?
Yeah, we are looking at this geothermal power station, and from a station like this one, you're going to get some sulfur fallout. So these plumes are not entirely clean, but it's cleaner than most other alternatives. But very few things can beat hydro and wind.
Right. So there's actually a little bit of greenhouse emission from this.
Yeah, there are. It's probably like 10% of you running the same thing on a diesel engine. So it's, there are certainly emissions from this, but they're not, in the scale of things, they're not huge.
Can we expect that this would be able to supply power indefinitely into the future?
All geothermal operations are in some sense mining operations, but I mean, a well-designed one should be able to produce heat or power for hundreds of years.
Yeah, certainly enough to take us to the next level of technology, whatever that
Certainly enough to do that, yeah. This is the first one of a sequence of fairly big hydropower stations that were built. This one was built in the late 60s and then following on. They play a major role in our energy economy.
So what is the mix here roughly in terms of electricity production? How much of that comes from hydro?
3/4 is hydro, 1/4 is geothermal. And we could expand in wind power easily here. It's clearly a very good resource in terms of wind power. But there's a question, of course, in terms of where do you sell it to? Ideally, we would need to cable to Europe to be able to really benefit with wind. But we have to, that'll be part of the mix in the future. But those three ingredients will then probably be our main source there. And all of them are pretty much carbon free.
And that will be part of eventually contemplated a much larger grid that could extend over much of Europe and
Yes.
Eurasia and even into northern Africa.
Yeah,
each area contributing its
exactly. You can
ideal.
have solar power further south and wind power in a region like this, and then mixed with our hydro and hydro elsewhere, and probably nuclear in some locations. There'd be a mix, and that's what we need.
So the beauty of hydroelectric power is that it's constant, but it's also, you can regulate it.
Yes, you can regulate it. Behind all these power plants, there's a system of reservoirs, and from there the water is regulated into the power plants.
Power stations like this allow for power to be ramped up and down practically in just moments. So they make an ideal match for the renewable energies as we bring them on board. So all around the world there are varying levels of renewable resource and varying levels of hydro that in many cases is already in place. It's an engineering challenge to gradually bring the new sources on board and match them with the sources that we already have. Wind energy is in its infancy here in Iceland, but we're here in front of the first two large turbines in Iceland. What can you tell us?
Yeah, basically this is in some ways an experimental project from the National Power Company. We had been doing estimates of what is the wind power in this region, and it's a very good region for wind power. And Iceland in general is a very favorable location in that respect. So wind power can fit with hydropower in that you can use the wind as a complement. So during the winter time, for instance, when it's windier, you can run things on wind, and then in the summertime when there's less wind but more hydro, you can run things on hydro, and you can use the wind to balance against hydro.
So while wind is just getting started here in Iceland, it's very much more advanced in different countries around the world. There are some states in Germany that get half or more of their electricity from wind. There are states in America like Iowa gets 20-25% of its electricity from wind. Texas gets 10, 12 or more percent. And various areas, especially along the Great Plains, look like they're going to be a huge wind resource. So around the world, wind is a renewable energy source that is growing faster than almost any other resource, even faster than the conventional resources are right now. And the price of wind has been plummeting over the last couple of decades, so it is now more than competitive with conventional sources of power. So wind coming on very strong. Here in Iceland, wind is obviously hasn't even scratched the surface yet, and we have yet to see how solar energy is coming on. Experts tell me that solar is the next wind. And so we'll see that coming on, maybe not so much here in Iceland, but around the world. So we're developing a suite of renewable choices that are only going to become more easily accessible and cheaper over coming years.